Hello there, Luciano speaking. Oliveira Lawyers, one more live stream. Today is Wednesday, March the 12th. Now it's 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time, and we have our chat open for participation by our friends. Let's take a look over here and see if there are any entries. All right, no entries yet. Let me make sure we are live. Last time we had a snafu, and we were here talking non-stop without being live. So I'm making sure, yes, it looks we are live now. And let's get started. So, taking a look at the news, let's take a look at the news in Brazil. So, the main headline here says electricity bill is jacked and it causes the highest inflation for a February month in 22 years. So as you can see, inflation, economic turmoil, it seems to be everywhere, and it's not. Brazil is not going to be an exception. We have, very concerning news as we speak from an economic point of view. And guess what? Guess what? The eggs, the price of the eggs are unbelievable in Brazil, just like they are in the United States. That's extremely interesting. I don't know what's causing, the crazy prices for eggs. But as you can see, this is happening not only in Brazil, not only the United States, but Brazil as well, and maybe other countries. Like if you are from a country different from the United States and Brazil, please chime in and let us know if the prices for eggs are also going crazy, just like they are here in Brazil. All right, so in addition to the electricity bill, there is always some news about the United States. And here you're going to see this gentleman over here is the Ministry of the Economy in Brazil, Fernando Haddad, a very close ally to President Lula, and unfortunately with very little understanding of economics, but he is the guy running the show. And here he's talking about Trump's tariffs, and he's saying, the Brazilian government is interested in negotiate no retaliation whatsoever. No retaliation whatsoever. Of course, he is addressing the 20%, the 25% tariff on, I think it's on iron and aluminum, right? Like, I think these are the two metals that are being targeted by the U.S. administration. And yes, so, the impact of the tariffs are going to be across the globe. So not only in Canada, Europe, China, but Brazil is also very concerned about tariffs, right? Like, just highlighting, I'm not like endorsing Trump's tariffs, but just sharing a little bit about my experience with Brazil and international trade. And Brazil has been using tariffs pretty much forever, right? Like since we were a colony of Portugal. And, and sometimes it's not just tariffs. Like, right now, if you try to bring, if you import a car from the United States, the tariffs are going to be about 100%, right? So no 25%, no 50%, no 75%, 100% tariff from, for cars that are bought from the United States. But Brazil goes well beyond the tariffs. Brazil has this tradition of simply prohibiting importing altogether, okay? So believe it or not, even when you pay 100% tariff to bring a car from the United States to Brazil, guess what? You can only bring a car that's either brand new, meaning you are buying from the dealership and this car has virtually no mileage on it, or you're gonna be able to buy a car with over 30 years of age, right? Otherwise, you cannot import into Brazil. And this was very conspicuous back in the 90s, because in the 90s there was a prohibition across the spectrum, and the idea was, to allow Brazil to develop manufacturing. We should basically just close the doors and do not let anyone come into Brazil. So as you can see, that was way, beyond just tariffs. And I remember in the 90s, right? Like I was a teenager, and we used to go, like sometimes I would travel with my father, like I was living in Sao Paulo back then, and we would travel to Paraguay. Paraguay is a neighbor country of Brazil, and we would buy stuff that was not available in Brazil, particularly electronics, liquors, some type of more luxurious items, and they were virtually non-existing in Brazil. Again, even if someone was willing to pay a 200% tariff, which by Brazilian terms is not like too much, I guess. You wouldn't be able to buy that thing. So we would travel to Paraguay, and each person would have a quota. I don't recall exactly the amount, maybe it was like a $200 quota, and you could buy up to $200 of imports in Paraguay and then bring to Brazil to enjoy those items that you could virtually, or, like actually not buy anywhere in Brazil. All right, I see here, Didi. Finally, someone is chiming in. Didi says, hello, bom dia. Good to see you over here, Didi. Didi, remind me, I think you are in the United States, right? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, correct me, but I think you have dual citizenship, Didi. And we have other folks over here. Don't be shy. Let me know the topics of your interest. We have at least 10 participants in the live stream right now. Didier was the first one to chime in. Don't be shy, guys. Let me know your thoughts. Okay, so these are the news. Here on wall. Again, here we have another comment on Trump, and it's actually attacking Zelensky, and it says, despite being attacked by Trump and Putin, Zelensky is not interested in talks with Lula and Xi, like the China's president, right? Like, I mean, just some, context, like UOL, that's a major portal, right? Like they are the portal for Folha de São Paulo, which is like one of the largest newspapers in the country. They're pretty aligned with the Lula administration, pretty left-oriented, right? Like, so if we would compare to media in the United States, I guess UOL would be New York Times, okay? So just giving you some context. But what I like about UOL is, they are pretty open about their political orientation. Despite that, they are not going to refrain from pointing out the problems in the President Lula administration. So, I like that they disclose their political orientation, and I also like that they are going to be, they're going to try to be neutral in a sense that they're going to, pinpoint actual problems in Brazil. All right, U.S. dollar currency. As of today, a dollar is buying 5.8 Brazilian reais. That's a historically a very good exchange rate, and not surprisingly, we have a large number of real estate transactions here at the firm. All right, people are taking advantage of the strong currency exchange rate. the historically low minimum requirement for you to buy a property and secure residency in Brazil. And just as traditionally, Brazil is still a buyer's market, right? Like, so you have, different factors really creating a very interesting scenario for foreign citizens buying property in Brazil. Didi is confirming, yes, I am in the US and dual citizenship. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for participating, Didi. Raven, welcome back, Raven. Bom dia, Luciano. Thank you for the advice last show. Absolutely, Raven. Thank you for showing up again. We have Matthew, support from Texas. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for showing up. And that's it for the news. Let's take a look here if we have any more points of interest. If not, we're gonna check here on our backlog of topics. Let's see what we have over here. All right, yeah, that's a kind of frequent question here, like I'm trying to marry a Brazilian citizen, and I've been to Brazil for the third time in a row. Every time I go to the registry, they are going to ask for a different document. What's going on, and what do you recommend in my case? Yeah, so, as I like to say, and I hope I don't sound like a broken record, but in Brazil there is a tradition of red tape and bureaucracy. The registries, they have so many rules that you need to follow that, it's very tough for, not only U.S. citizens, but, citizens from any country to actually marry a Brazilian in Brazil. So, yes, you do need the persistency. There is, a very basic advice is for you to ask them for a checklist of requirements from the get-go and try to make them follow that checklist later down the line. But unfortunately, the registries, they have a discretion in terms of how to enforce the requirements, and it's not unusual at all for new requirements to pop up during your journey, and because of that, is not unusual for U.S. citizens, particularly, to go the Utah route. What is the Utah route? The Utah route, it's a route that is being used for a while now, and which is basically for the foreign citizen and the Brazilian to marry through a video conference in the state of Utah. And after the marriage takes place in Utah, the marriage is going to need to be recorded at the Brazilian consulate in charge of the Utah jurisdiction. After this recording by the consulate, you just need to get your U.S. marriage certificate and the transcription by the Brazilian consulate and do a final recording in Brazil. Once you do that, guess what? You have a fully fledged Brazilian marriage certificate. So you are kind of circumventing the whole nonsense, red tape, and bureaucracy that you would face in Brazil anyhow. And many people are saying, well, but I would like to marry in Brazil because, there are all the parents of my, Brazilian fiancé, and they're not going to be able to, enjoy the ceremony. But listen, we're talking about the civil marriage, right? So the civil marriage could very well be done in Utah, and you can have the biggest party you can get or you want in Brazil. And, the relatives of your Brazilian partner are going to be able to attend without an issue. Once you have the Brazilian marriage certificate, and if you want to get a green card for your Brazilian partner to go to the U.S. or, similar approach in Canada or Europe, the doors are open as well. So I hope that makes sense. Sam Tingle, welcome, Sam. Sam says, hello. I have a question about how to renew a digital nomad while in Brazil. Do you need a background check for the renewal? Yes, Sam, you do need you do need the background check, right, or also called criminal records. Now, let's assume you've been in Brazil for the duration of your digital nomad. What we're gonna present here at the firm is actually gonna be the criminal records for Brazil, right? Because if you're living in Brazil, guess what? Like, you don't necessarily need a background check for your country of origin. So we're gonna present a background check for both the state in which you are based and the federal jurisdiction of that state as well. So it's gonna be one on the state level, another one on the federal level, and they are going to be used for the renewal of your digital nomad. Now, let's assume, like some of our clients, even though they have the digital nomad, they still spend considerable time, let's say in the United States or another country. And if that's your situation, you may also need the criminal records for the United States or another country as well. Most of our clients, they are going to be fine with just the criminal records from Brazil for the renewal of the digital nomad residency. All right, Sam, Didi, I am in contact with the Brazilian consulate in Orlando and need título by WhatsApp. It's been difficult. They are looking into my past Brazilian passport. I may need your services for document retrieval. Yes, Didi, yes, we do help. There are many people who end up hiring our service, right? There is a lot of, again, bureaucracy and red tape when dealing with Brazilian institutions. So what we do, Didi, we have like blocks of hours. We sell you a block of hours, and then we have one of our cartório / consulate specialists, doing the legwork for you, all right? So she's gonna do pretty much the same thing that you're doing, but they've been, in your shoes like many times, so sometimes they are able to find like like an easier route, or maybe just to endure the pain, right, and get this thing done for you, Didi. So yes, we would be glad to assist you. Stevens, oi Luciano, hello Stevens, perhaps too specific of a question, laughing. What is the bare minimum documentation required for a foreigner, for me, an American US passport holder, to have a local bank account in Brazil? Stevens, so there are two types of bank accounts that you could be getting, right? Like if you're going to be pursuing a traditional, typical local bank account in Brazil, then you need the resident card, right? Like, so let's show the card over here again, our NM card, right? So unless you have this card, you're not gonna be able to get a traditional bank account. All right. Now, this said, there is also the non-resident bank account, and the non-resident bank account is gonna allow you to get this non-local bank account without the card. And if that's the case, the documents that they are going to traditionally ask you for, they are going to be your passport, your tax return. Yes, they are going to want to see your tax return. They are going to want to see a proof of address. And these are going to be the three main documents that you're going to need. We facilitate the opening of a non-resident bank accounts in Brazil, Stevens. So if that's something that you need, sooner than later, get in touch with us and we can help you accomplish just that. Ellen, all right, Ellen, good to see you. Bom dia, Luciano. Does your firm help clients with obtaining an FBI background check? I'm from the United States. Yes, Ellen. We don't like work on a piecemeal basis. Because in our experience, like, people are going to be pressed for time, they're going to be desperate, and we're going to be selling a low-cost service and this person is gonna be like, crazy on top of us, and we can expedite the process, right? So we had a page like this in the past. We removed it from our website because it was like a magnet for, like troublesome clients, if you will. But we do assist. We have this service both in our Rio de Janeiro office and in our São Paulo office. We actually have the actual FBI cards for fingerprinting in our offices. And so, if you hire this service, just a heads up, don't just show up. You need to hire the service first, because then we're gonna schedule a time for you, to show up. We're gonna have the material prepared, and then we can take your fingerprinting and send it to the United States first for the FBI background check to be issued, and second, for the apostille to be obtained in the Washington D.C. Department of State. All right, Ellen. But yes, that's something we provide. Is on a case by case basis. So as long as we can tell you're not desperate, you're not gonna become a problem at the firm, we could help you with that. So if you just wanna send an email to us, we can give you more information on that, Ellen. Santingo says obrigado. Obrigado você, Santingo, for being with us. Stevens, I have heard you only need a CPF, which you can get easily, but I also heard that you need a Brazilian visa with a duration of at least a year, like a digital nomad, which is harder. No, just the CPF is not enough. The CPF alone is not enough for you to open a regular bank account in Brazil, Stephens. There is no such a thing. And, like, again, right, like I think people don't quite get the dimension of the red tape and bureaucracy in Brazil. So listen, even if you have the 1 year visa, right, like the digital nomad, you have your card, you have every single piece of document, some banks, they are still gonna decline you, right? So, this thing is so, like, how can I say, not complex, but so, typical of Brazil in a sense that, people are not going to give you these things unless they see you, enduring some pain. That even if you have every single document, some banks, they're still going to deny you, right? So that's just a heads up, Stevens. Whenever, you hear something, well, you just need a CPF, run away from that source because for sure they don't know what they're talking about. All right, Stevens. Holy, hello, Holy. We are UK citizens wanting to get married in Rio this May. If we cannot attend in person to register our intent to marry or provided the documents, is this a service you provide? Holy, no, not really, right? Like, I'm not sure if you were like at the beginning of this live stream. Maybe you wanna, watch the beginning. If you miss it, the beginning, I was talking exactly about marriage, right? I was telling people about some cases, some clients, from the U.S. They are going to be coming to Brazil for their third time, trying to marry, bringing all the documents that the registry is asking for, and they're still unable to marry because the registry is going to ask for just one more thing, and they have no concern that you are traveling internationally. They couldn't care less. All right, so very troublesome to marry in Brazil. Rio de Janeiro is a little bit worse than the average, right? Like they usually have a laundry lists of requirements, and in theory, Holy, you could have those things done through a power of attorney, but the paperwork and the number of steps that you end up having to follow is just too much, right? Like, if he would charge you for this service we would be providing, this thing would not make sense financially for you. And even if you are charging a lot of money, in my experience, like, sometimes you get in a catch-22 type of situation, and it's just like a massive headache. You want a certain answer, we cannot give you a certain answer because we depend on the registry like to decide what they're going to want in your case. So it becomes just a whole mess, Holly. I would not recommend, like, I mean, if you guys are from the UK, you would be better off to marry in the UK, right? And you can always have the marriage ceremony in Brazil with whatever type of minister you want, with whatever background, so that would be maybe an approach, Holy, for you to consider. Marrying in the UK and having the religious ceremony done in Brazil. Let me know if that makes sense for you, Holy. Ronnie Dio, so good to see Ronnie back. Ronnie says, with the digital nomad, do you get the R&M card so you're able to rent and turn on utilities while you in Brazil? Yes, Ronnie, that's for sure. Like once you get, or let me put it in a different way, right? Once you get the R&M card, you would be entitled to rent, right? So there is no prohibition for you to rent, and you can also get utilities on, right? Like electricity, internet. Like traditionally, water is going to be included in the HOA fees, unless you live in a standalone house, which in my experience is somewhat rare for foreign citizens. Foreign citizens, they tend to, prefer condos. Of course, they are safer, they are easier to maintain, so, better choice there. But yes, you would be able to get those things, right, Ronnie? And this is always like, in theory, there may always be some type of utility company or internet company who's not going to accept the card. That's just how I was answering the question about like the bank account. I was telling Stevens, even if you get the digital nomad and then you get to the card, sometimes like companies are gonna say, listen, I don't care that you have a 1 year stay in Brazil, I'm not gonna work with you. And that's just part of life. That's very typical of Brazil. But if you are Ronnie, in major cities, right? Like if you are in Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, Florianopolis, right? Like you shouldn't have an issue. Another perspective on my answer is that whenever you're renting, you are dealing with traditionally a landlord, right? Like, and the landlord, even though you have a resident card, the landlord could say, you know what, I don't want to rent to a foreign citizen, right? And there is no fair housing like there is in the United States, a law precluding the landlord from saying no to you. All right, so that's a nuance you need to understand, Ronnie. There is always, this need of you and the landlord working well, okay? Because if the landlord looks at you and say, well, I don't want to, rent it to a gringo. Maybe this gringo has the card, but, they're going to go to the U.S. like in 3 months from now. Maybe something happens to the gringo when they are in the United States, and here I am with my house rented, and I'm not going to be able to enter the house. I'm not going to be able to, finish this contract without hiring a lawyer. So there are reasons for a Brazilian landlord to refuse renting to you, even if you have the card. All right, that's another nuance for you to consider, Ronnie. But most of the time, they're going to be fine with it, right? Just trying to give you comprehensive feedback, if you will. Ellen, understood. Thanks so much. You're really welcome, Ellen. How long is the process to apply for a digital nomad visa from start to finish? I am in Brazil on an extended tourist visa until June the 2nd and hoping I have enough time to navigate this process. In our experience, Ellen, people may take about a month to collect the necessary documents, and then usually we ask for an additional month to process the paperwork, to prepare, to troubleshoot whatever is not on point. And so usually a 2-month timeline is what we needed to get your application in the immigration system, all right? In the immigration system. After it's in the immigration system, another couple of months for review. After you are approved, you have traditionally 30 days to attend a biometric. After the biometric appointment, you would need to actually wait for an additional couple of months for the car to become available. Okay, so altogether maybe 5 to 6 months, but very important for you, Ellen, is that once the application is in, this is going to stop the clock, and you're going to be able to remain in Brazil legally without overstaying until there is a final answer by the Brazilian immigration. All right, Ellen? So, like if you, my recommendation for you would be to start as soon as possible, right? Like, I mean, there is no problem with starting sooner than later. So you have your documents organized, and you can have it filed and so on. Holy, thanks very much for your advice. Thank you for showing up, Holy. I hope to see you again here in our live streams. Didi, everyone, please show Luciano some love and appreciation by clicking the like button. I really appreciate it, Didi. Thank you so much. Yes, we have actually 24 people in our live stream right now. That's a really nice number. And we just have 11 likes. So if you could please go ahead, just click the like button. You're gonna help us with our, business, and you're gonna help other people just like you to find this content. So yes, appreciate it, Didi, and all of you who are hitting that like button. And I see the likes increasing, so I really appreciate the support. Wally, welcome back, Wally. Sir, after I approved my digital nomad visas and reaching Brazil, so I want to apply my visa, dependent visa. Is it possible to get visa for my wife after entering in Brazil? Wally, most probably yes. Okay, it's not guaranteed. And let me explain you the dynamic behind this question. And I understand you probably want a yes or no, right, Wally? Well, you don't want a maybe, right? But unfortunately, in Brazilian immigration, and I guess, in immigration elsewhere, you can never say something is 100% guaranteed. So the digital nomad visa or residency, Wally, has no, at least from as far as I know, has no prohibition against the family reunification visa, all right? However, the digital nomad, and I know because I work with immigration, I have colleagues who come from the federal government, and the digital nomad is not seen as a family visa, right? This is more like a standalone thing. And I know that in some countries, like in Portugal, for instance, people do travel as a family under a digital nomad. But in Brazil, the perception of the digital nomad visa is pretty different, Wally. We see in Brazil a digital nomad as a person by themselves who are coming to Brazil for a short period of time, right? So in Portugal, for instance, if you stay 5 years under a digital nomad, guess what? You're going to achieve a permanent residency. In Brazil, you don't achieve anything at all under the digital nomad. So Brazilian immigration, Brazilian officers, they see that as something very punctual, like something concise in terms of timeline, okay? And my concern, Wally, is that whenever I see people thinking about digital nomad with family, guess what? The message that comes to my head, and I'm probably wrong a good chunk of the time, is that they're actually intending to migrate to Brazil, not to stay under the digital nomad, but to actually live in Brazil on a permanent basis. And if I get this impression, guess what? Immigration is gonna get this impression as well. And as soon as they have this impression, Wally, well, guess what? They are not gonna give you the family unification visas, right? Because there is no obligation by any immigration to give people visas, right? So my concern is that, Wally, particularly if you try to do at the same time, right? Like if you do it at the same time, they can tell, all right, this person is immigrating to Brazil under the digital nomad, but their intention is to remain there. That's the first scenario. Second scenario, you apply just for yourself. Let's say you get the digital nomad visa, and then you go, you try to get the family reunification visa for your family. Again, the consular officers, they say, all right, now I see his intention was not to stay for a year or two in Brazil. His intention is to actually take his family to Brazil and remain for good. And guess what? If they have this idea in their heads, they are not going to approve the visas. All right. So, Wally, there is no yes or no answer. There is just the background information I gave you, and you need to, do the best you can with this information. And I hope it was helpful. Camila, thank you so much. Camila is back and she's buying me coffee today. I got a $3 gift from Camila. Thank you so much, Camila. You're very sweet. I'm gonna have some nice coffee with this gift from Camila. I really appreciate, Camila. Thank you so much. All right, Ellen P, thank you so much. This is so helpful. All right, Ellen, keep coming back for more. Moses is back as well. What is the minimum wage in Brazil? So right now, if I'm not mistaken, is between 1,600 and 1,700, 1,600 and 1,700 reais. Let's take a look together, Moses. Brasil salário mínimo 2025. All right. Yes, it says just like 1509, so 1,500, right? 1,500 roughly. But there is a bunch of other things that they added to the, minimum wage. And one of the examples is going to be like a bonus per child, right? So if you have an employee, and if the employee has a child, guess what? The minimum wage is going to increase. So it's not really easy to pinpoint, but the 16 or 17, between 16 to 1,700 a month is going to be what you see as minimum wage. You probably can tell that this is a very low wage. So if you convert that into US dollars, we're talking about a little less than $300 a month. So as you can see, the minimum wage is really, really, really low. Now, I gotta tell you that in most areas, like if you are in Rio de Janeiro, if you are in São Paulo, Florianópolis, most positions, they are not gonna be paying minimum wage. They're gonna be paying substantially more than the minimum wage. So the minimum wage, it was introduced by the federal government as a way to reduce poverty, right? Particularly in the Northeast, for instance, like in the countryside of the Northeast of Brazil, people are actually going to be paid minimum wage, right? So in this case, believe it or not, the minimum wage is going to be something very positive, because otherwise, if there wasn't a minimum wage, the person would receive even less. They could be paid like $100 a month, like in the countryside of the Northeast of Brazil. So from that perspective, the minimum wage, even though it sounds like bad, right? Because it's such low amount, like for the countryside, or really, like the poorest areas in Brazil, the minimum wage is going to have a positive effect. Because if someone pays less than the minimum wage, then the employee can go and complain about their employers, and then the labor courts are going to make the employer to pay the difference with penalties, right? So there you go. Really interesting question, Moses. Santingo, one more question about the digital nomad visa renewal. When you apply to renew, do you submit your passport with the application, or can you keep it and use it to travel if necessary? San, nobody is going to retain your passport, okay? You can basically just present the passport traditionally. when you are applying for the renewal of your resident card. But it's going to be a matter of presenting the card, getting your card back, and then you can travel as much as you want. Stevens, one more question. Is a biometric appointment necessary for a digital nomad visa? Yes. It is always mandatory, Stevens, for any route you pick. Even if you provide a clean background check, if yes, where is that done? Yes, it is done because Brazil is not concerned about your background, right? Brazil wants to have you in the Brazilian database, like fingerprints, right? If you commit a crime in Brazil, Brazil wants to know it was you, right? Like they're going to have your fingerprints in a database. So just like in those, detective movies, like if you go to in some area you're not supposed to be, and they find your fingerprints there, they're gonna know that you were there, and for that purpose, that's why they are doing the biometrics. Okay, so this is usually done in major cities in which you're gonna have a federal police station. In São Paulo, is done in the neighborhood of Lapa. Right, that's where the main federal police station is located. In Rio de Janeiro, very curiously, like is inside an airport, right? Like is inside the Santos Dumont airport. So whenever I am traveling through Santos Dumont, it's always interesting. Like when I see like the signs, follow this way to go to the Brazilian Federal Police, and that's where almost everyone from Rio de Janeiro who's immigrating into the country is going to show up for the biometrics. JH, does Brazilian citizenship give any major advantages over just having the RNM? JH, I think the main one is for you to have something that's not going to be taken from you. At any given point in time, right? Like even if you have a permanent residency in Brazil, Brazil could remove that from you, could take that away from you, right? For any reasons, right? And once you become a citizenship, then of course, naturally, like the Brazilian government is not going to be able to take that away from you. So the citizenship brings more certainty about the future. It could have an impact on applications for mortgage. Of course, a Brazilian bank is going to be more willing to give better terms to someone who's a citizen instead of just a resident, okay? You're going to be able to vote in Brazilian elections if you wish to do so. There is also, a couple of prohibitions for non-citizens. One that is kind of, very interesting is that you're not going to be able to buy rural land of any size. You would be allowed to buy rural land of small sizes, but not like large sizes. That's another prohibition. There are also professions or occupations you're not going to be able to perform in Brazil as a permanent resident, such as to own a newspaper, right? Like, I mean, we think that foreign citizens, they should not own a newspaper, right? And these are some examples, GH, of things that a non-citizen would not be able to do without, achieving the naturalization. Oliuni, welcome Oliuni. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your gift. Thank you for your gift. I really appreciate. And more coffees to me, I guess, Oliuni. I really appreciate. Oliuni says, boa tarde. In your experience, what is the current average waiting time for an appointment with Polícia Federal in Florianópolis? Oliuni, it is longer than elsewhere, okay? It is longer than elsewhere. I do remember my team complaining about Florianópolis, right? Saying, listen, it looks like they don't have an appointment system. You need to send an email and wait. And sometimes they don't reply your email. It's a little bit messy, Oliuni, but not impossible, all right? So I would just recommend you to stay on top of it. And of course, if you're working with us, then our team is going to do the entire work of booking the appointment for you, Oliuni. All right, but some places they are just like slower than others, but they are all feasible. So no concern about Florianopolis, just taking longer than elsewhere or uni. Raven, what is the visa best option for someone who wants to live in Brazil long term, but wouldn't qualify for retirement visa? Raven, so aside of the family routes, the only actual route you're gonna have is gonna be the investment route. Okay, so there is no plan B, right? Like I mean, if you find an employer, that could be a route to longer term residency in Brazil. But the one that is gonna, make things the easiest is gonna be the real estate investment route. Okay, so just letting you know that investment route is usually the way to go. Retirement visa is pretty solid because it does give you access to permanent residency and citizenship later on, and you don't need to buy anything, right? And in the residency, in the investment route, yes, you need to invest some good chunk of money. Okay, Raven. Wally, so sir, what do you think? It is impossible to get a dependent visa of my digital nomads visa behalf. What is your experience? Says Wally. So yeah, I hear, right? Like I mean, you want to get a yes or no. I cannot give you, Wally. I cannot give you. I would say, like I mean, if you decided to follow that route, that would be on a best effort basis, right? Like I mean, you need to take the chances and just hope that you're gonna be picked by a good or by a immigration agent with a good heart, okay, and take your chances. But I would not advise on that route. Right, I would not usually advise on that route. I just think like here at the firm, Wally, we don't usually advise on routes that we don't feel confident about. Okay, so if you decided to follow that route, it's gonna be on a best effort basis. The kind of thing sometimes you do in life. You say, listen, chances are not great, but I'm gonna try anyhow, right? Knowing that there is a very good chance you're not gonna get the family reunification visas, particularly if they can tell. If they can tell you are actually planning to migrate to Brazil for good, right? Because that's not the purpose of the digital nomad. That could be for Portugal, right? Like for Portugal, Portugal in their mindset, and that's why they ask for much more money than Brazil, by the way, right? Like they wanna, very solid candidates coming under the digital nomad because eventually these digital nomads could become a resident, not in Brazil. In Brazil, you're coming as a digital nomad to stay for a short period of time and go back to your country. Okay, Wally? Stevens, what kind of Brazilian companies are most likely to sponsor a Brazil work visa for an educated foreigner? Or is this too difficult process for most local companies and they simply hire a local Brazilian? Stevens, like most Brazilian companies would not hire a foreign citizen. They don't even know how to do it, right? Like they get confused, they are concerned, so they would not hire. Now, it also depends on your, profession, on your occupation. Let's say if you are, a top consultant in the U.S. and you happen to be in Brazil, and maybe you're gonna, target the top 20 consulting firms in Brazil. Maybe one of these 20 firms is gonna be interested in someone with your profile. But that's not usual at all for Brazilian companies to hire foreign citizens. An exception would be, for instance, like for an English teacher in a language school, right? Like some language schools, they actually are familiar with the process, and they are gonna hire foreign citizens on purpose because naturally, right? Like I mean, if you're coming from the U.S., you are native, you have the accent, you have the skills, so you would be a great match from that perspective to a language school, if you will. Wally, and what is the benefits of residency card in Brazil? Yeah, Wally. So if you have the resident card, then you're gonna be able to open a bank account, a local bank account. You can more easily rent a place. You can set up your utilities, right? You can get, for instance, a Brazilian driver license. So, Wally, once you get the resident card, this is gonna give you access to many and probably most of the things we can do as Brazilians. All right. Another thing you can do is to get a traditional health insurance in Brazil, which is not going to be available if you are just a foreign citizen with a passport. Okay. So these are some of the things, Wally. Moses, do my family get family unification visa immediately? I'm getting investment visa so they can follow me to Brazil to get Brazilian ID. We usually apply for the real estate investor visa first, Moses, and we get the family reunification later. Okay, I guess there may be some firms that are going to apply for all of that all together, and others are going to do in stages. Here at the firm, we do in stages, just because there is always this kind of concern in the back of our heads, right? Like that when they see like a bunch of people coming to Brazil, naturally this is going to trigger a higher scrutiny, right? It doesn't mean they are going to, block or not approve your application. It just means that we think it's safer to first secure your residency and then later to plead for the other family members. All right. Ronnie Dio, is it better to start the digital nomad before arriving in Brazil or afterwards? Ronnie, in our experience, we like to file in Brazil, right? And a couple of reasons for that. Like we think that the process in Brazil is more steady, like we can forecast the outcome. And whenever you are applying through a consulate, you cannot foretell the result because, in my opinion, like the consular officers, they are not really immigration specialists, and they try to make up rules on the fly, right? Like, I mean, instead of going back to their boss and say, listen, I don't know what this thing means, or I don't know what to decide in this case, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do whatever comes to their mind, right? Like, and in Brazil, the process is better structured. The immigration analysts, they are better trained, and based on our experience, the results, they are going to be like more consistent, if you will. So that's the main reason, Ronnie, why we like to get the digital nomad done in Brazil instead of abroad. Second reason is because when you apply while in Brazil physically, right, like you need to be in Brazil, there is no need for you to present a health insurance with coverage in Brazil. Now, if you are applying abroad through, let's say, a consulate in the United States, the health insurance with coverage in Brazil is going to be a must. And, like I'm talking about health insurance. Many people say, well, but I'm going to buy this travel insurance with, $10 zillion, in coverage. Like they should be happy, right? That's not how it works, right? Like if the Brazilian immigration is selling health insurance, you don't show up with travel insurance and try to argue your way into the visa, right? That's not how you should do. So if you are abroad, you must have health insurance with coverage in Brazil, which is like if you don't have it, like it's expensive to buy, and you're gonna end up buying a for gringo insurance that's gonna be very expensive, and it's not gonna be accepted by the Brazilian health providers, right? So not a good idea in my opinion. Okay, we have a Colt Anderson. Colt says if, let's say, someone study and becomes a naturalized citizen in Brazil, does that mean they have to do mandatory military service? And if so, how would that process be like? Yes, Colt. That's a good question. And yes, if you are 30, you are still within a certain age, and you're gonna need to enroll in the military service, right? Like now, the military service in Brazil is gonna actually uh, happen, right? Like, I mean, the training for you to stay, let's say, for a year in a military base is gonna be, a tiny fraction of people actually enrolling into the military service. So for a foreign citizen, right, and the foreign citizen who's becoming naturalized, the chances of being required to actually go through military service training is pretty low, right? So I don't think that should be one of your concerns. I'm not saying it's impossible, right? Like nowadays, with the world the way it is, like you never know, you can never say never. But I can tell you that traditionally that should not be a major concern, quote. But very interesting question, by the way. All right, let me check how we're going here with our time. We still have a few minutes more. I'm going to take an additional couple of comments here. And then a heads up, we're not going to be meeting this Sunday, this coming Sunday, right? It's going to be 13, 14, 15, 16. So we're not meeting on the 16th, but we are meeting on the 19th, next Wednesday, all right? And I know that we have the next live stream thumbnail is available on our YouTube account. You can basically just come to our account, you click on notify me, so you're gonna know exactly when the live stream is starting, so you can always come back. You can always come back and participate as usual. So let's go ahead. JH, I heard that the Portuguese test you get to Brazilian citizenship is very difficult. Have you heard anything about this? JH, so expectation, right? Like, I mean, so the expectation of the Brazilian government is that you're gonna be able to speak, write, communicate, read in advanced level of Portuguese. I'm pulling up here. That's the CELP BRAS exam. That's the Portuguese language exam. And as you can see by their website, it's super cumbersome. It's not user friendly at all. Okay, but the CELP BRAS is an available route if you're gonna, like pursue citizenship. Nowadays, there is another route, which is as long as you are fluent, you could also present alternative evidence. Okay, which alternative evidence I'm talking about? I'm talking about, for instance, you could have, like friends providing with an affidavit, and you could have, let's say, if you graduate from a school, you could also use those things as evidence that you are qualified to be living in Brazil, if you will. Okay, so there are alternative routes for you. Now, let's take a look at a final one. It's going to be Moses. Why should the immigration be worried if I'm applying for a reunion visa for my family after investing over $200,000 in the country? Besides, it is part of the agreement. Moses, I understand the frustration, but we are here to tell you what it is, right? Like, I mean, immigration is never a right, Moses. There is no deal that just because you bought like a property over $200,000, you're gonna get it. That's not an agreement. That's an available route that people could pursue, but there is zero certainty that anyone is gonna get it, right? Like you are pleading or talking about legal concepts. There is a right. Whenever you do something, you have this right of getting something else. And it's not how immigration works, Moses. The way immigration works is like it's going to be a privilege, right? That's a legal concept. A privilege means that you may get it, but if the authority overseeing the process decides that you shouldn't get it, guess what? You have no right to that thing. It's a privilege, right? So maybe you're going to get it, maybe you're not going to get it. I would agree, Moses, that there is an expectation that you should get, right? But that's all it is an expectation. If anyone tells you that is going to be guaranteed to get even the investor visa, right? I'm not even talking about the family reunification. If anyone tells you that this thing is guaranteed, run away because they don't know what they're talking about. But yes, I understand the frustration, right? And now, if you think about the 200,000 US dollars, Moses, if you compare to Portugal, right? Like for Portugal, the golden visa is now coming with a 500,000 euros. And by the way, they don't even allow you to buy property anymore, right? Like you need to invest in a bunch of, like second-hand stuff, like, funds that you don't know if you're going to get your money back or not. So in Brazil, it's not like you are investing like, that much money. Again, from the immigration perspective, right? To me, it's a lot of money, by the way, right? And but I just want to, explain to you the dynamics, Moses. So if that's the mindset, you may need to rethink your plans because it would be extremely frustrating if you follow that route and you don't get those things, right? So it's important for you to understand that immigration is always a privilege, never a right. All right, guys, I want to say thank you for everyone who participated. I want to say thank you. It was Camila and it was Odiuni who bought me coffee. I really appreciated the care. I also appreciate all the likes that you guys gave me. We have 19 likes, is a pretty good number, so I really appreciate it. We're going to be together again on next Wednesday, and I want to wish you all a blessed rest of your day.